That, folks, was the video that we showed in New York when we were at the Intelligent Community Forum. And every community had an opportunity to conduct an interview with one of the ICF founders and talk about the community and a lot of the initiatives that were underway. And preceding the discussion that was held with the warden and the mayor, that was the video we showed. So I really think that highlighted our community and demonstrated a lot of the key things that are going on here. So we've heard that question that raised a number of times, and the wardens used it I don't know how many times since, is, you know, we have to quit asking about why Essex, Windsor, but now the conversation should be why not Windsor, Essex, and it's all about changing that conversation. So welcome everyone, a belated welcome I guess on our behalf. I humbly apologize for the length of time that we had you sitting here, that at least hopefully there was some refreshments that you could take advantage of and renew some friendships. The board was having a rather lengthy discussion about where it's going, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So again, thank you for persevering and remaining here with us this afternoon. You see the agenda that's on our how we want to move forward here, and we're quite honored to have Bill Hutchinson to be with us this afternoon, to be our keynote speaker. I certainly believe that you're going to find Bill quite engaging and quite thought-provoking in the presentation that he's going to provide for us. Bill's an international business and social entrepreneur, and today he's the chair and CEO of Hutchinson Management International and the chair of iCanada Alliance that has been created to raise Canada to the global intelligent nation status. So we're thinking about intelligent communities. Bill's involved in making Canada an intelligent nation. From 2006 to 2011, Bill was the executive director of Intelligent Communities for the Waterfront Toronto project, where he led the creation of one of the world's most advanced community communication systems and arranged $70 million in financing for its installation and operation over the next 15 years. Waterfront Toronto has a mandate to revitalize 800 hectares of derelict waterfront property land immediately adjacent to the downtown of Toronto. When the project is completed, more than $35 billion will have been invested to create homes, offices, parklands for over 120,000 residents with 20,000 employees working in the knowledge economy industries. Bill was previously global chair of telecommunications and industry and the national director, telecoms, media and technology for Ernst & Young. And during his career has been the founding CEO of 4 successful business startups and the CEO of 3 corporate turnarounds. As a social entrepreneur, he's been the founding chair or founding director of 12 industry associations and social consortia and foundations. He was the vice chair of Canada's National Advisory Board for Science and Technology, chaired by the Prime Minister of Canada, the founding chair of KINSA, the Kids Internet Safety Alliance, and the founding chair of Canary, which for the past 18 years has led the creation and evolution of Canada's renowned national research and education high-speed communications network. Bill has also served as a member of the board of directors of 15 public and private businesses and firms in Canada and the United States over the past 20 years. Bill has been recognized for his work in the Smart City Intelligent Community field by the receipt of the first Lifetime Achievement Award granted by the New York-based Intelligent Community Forum, with whom we're intimately familiar. He was named as one of the top 35 people in the world to watch in real estate technology in 2009 and again in 2010. And in 2004, he was named one of Canada's top 30 movers and shakers in information, communications, and technology over the past 30 years. In recognition of his pioneering and innovations in computing and telecommunications, he has been elected a Fellow of the Canadian Information Processing Society and member of the Canadian Hall of Fame of Canadian Information Productivity Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Bill Hutchinson.
This is an interesting business, this intelligent community business. And as you're going along a journey like this, there are always some funny parts to it. And 20 years ago, I created Smart Toronto. And it built quite a head of steam. And it did something very similar to the early days and successes that you've been having here. We created an advisory council. And it built up quite a head of steam. We had leaders from healthcare, education, all across society, 35 people. Only 9 of them were from the information and communications technology field. So we were looking at social issues and everything. Anyway, all the mayors from around Toronto got quite interested in this. We called it Smart Toronto. So one day I was asked to come and talk to the regional mayors about what is Smart Toronto. And back then, of course, we used overhead foils. Some of you will remember these. And I duly went through it all. And Mayor Hazel McCallion was sitting right beside me. I think she was probably 80 then, and I don't know what she is now, about 100, I guess. Anyway, I finished this whole presentation. And I asked, any questions? Up shot her hand. Yes, Madam Mayor. I said, what is your question? She looked at me with her eyes. They just drill you, these eyes. Mr. Hutchison, that was a very nice presentation, but don't you know that the phrase Smart Toronto is an oxymoron? So, you never know what people think of the names you create, but Windsor, Essex, or the SMART initiatives that you're involved in are very impressive. And I even have my own top 7 badge here. It wasn't given to me today. I've been wearing it for a couple of months. So there we go. Now, let me just set the stage briefly. We're all familiar with what's going on in the Middle East, the revolutions really that are happening. And these are being driven by new kinds of communications, interverbal communications based on technology. And we've all read about how leaders knocked down the internet to try to stop this revolution, or these revolutions. And they weren't quite smart enough to realize that their businesses were in fact running on the internet. So they knocked down their businesses, and the economies went down, and that just further spurred the revolution, because you need big economic collapses many times to stimulate revolutions. And of course, everybody just went on tweeting. They weren't Wi-Fiing on the internet, they were tweeting. You have to go back to the end of the 1400s when Gutenberg developed his printing press to see the same kind of an impact of the spread of information and knowledge that we're having today. And when Gutenberg developed his press, the word started to spread, people started reading books. Initially, you could do about 40 pages an hour on the old techniques, and he created a movable type and everything else. And that begat over time newspapers, and the serfs then decided and got the knowledge that, hey, we don't like this feudal system anymore. We're going to change it. And in the early days, some people, of course, were able to read more than others. And so they became leaders, but new financial systems developed, and a whole new infrastructure was created. Now today, what we're seeing is in fact a confluence, not just of this information coming out and being distributed and managed in new ways, but in fact the transportation or the communications as well that has evolved only over about the last 150 years. So initially, it was on foot, on horseback, and carrier pigeon. Smoke signals, too. Then we started to have electrical communications, and now electronic communications, and now, as a result of the development of the transistor that moved us from the vacuum tube in the 40s, where a transistor used to be the size of a chiclet, chewing gum, and now you put 1 billion of them on the head of a pin. That evolution, the evolution of data storage, so that now we can store all the books of the Library of Congress on some little piece of magnetic disc that I carry in my briefcase. And of course, fiber optics and wireless communications that have evolved because of the advances in technology, communications technology, and also computer and software technology. So what we now have is, maybe you could argue, even a greater potential impact than in Gutenberg's days. That was about information, but now it's about these tremendous advances in communications and these new methods of information dissemination and communication, interpersonal and interbusiness. So the reason I'm mentioning this is, when you get into such very impressive initiatives as Windsor has been in to win the Top 7 award, it's a lot of effort, no question about it, and I know that many of you feel that you've already achieved a lot of benefit. But you know, sometimes there's a tendency to say, did that, what else can we do? Let's go and do something else. We got there, we're in the Top 7. But my point is that there's been this long, long gestation period, if I'm going to draw a curve here. You know, first the information, then the industrial age, and then different mechanizations and electronic. We're now just on the knee of this curve into the future. And so those communities in the past that took advantage, first of all, of what was going on in the information side, and then in what was going on in transportation, for example, the U.S. creating the interstate highway system in the 50s and everything else, have moved out in front in terms of economic advantage and social prosperity for their citizens. Those that didn't fell away. And of course, the good news and the bad news is there are tremendous opportunities now for those that go after it, but the bad news is you got to keep at it, because we're all in this race and going after these opportunities. So we're really at the start of this knee on the curve. Even though, you know, some might argue, gosh, this has been going on for 400 years in the time we kind of got off the curve. But with the advent of communications and computer and data storage technologies, we've just seen the beginning of it. And so we're into this knowledge economy game. I've been involved in the creation of intelligent communities and smart cities now for about 20 years. I was living in Singapore for a while. They are one of the leaders at this. And I've been very privileged to be a judge, not this past year, but in other years in selecting the Intelligent Community of the Year. So I'm really just going to highlight what I thought might be some areas that might be useful for discussion, and a little bit of background in my